Jason Shafton, welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast.
I am super happy to be here. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, been looking forward to our conversation. So before starting your own consulting business and an agency, you worked at Google, where you led Google Play and social marketing. You were also a VP of marketing at Comedy Central. So maybe something funny will come from this. And then also Headspace. And I'm wondering, what did you learn about kind of marketing inside of these organizations, that are quite well known in many circles anyways. But I'm wondering, what did you learn inside of them that maybe you've thought about or have even observed that the kind of the typical business owner either doesn't know or doesn't understand in relation to, marketing and best practices and what actually works?
Yeah. No amount of marketing can make up for a bad product. So the thing that's consistent across all of the places I've had a chance to work, and even the companies I've now gotten to work with as a consultant, is if you have a great product, a certain element of it sells itself. I'm not going to suggest that if you build it, they will come, but great products cause people to talk about them and tell other people, and you get that incredible organic growth kind of coefficient of virality, K factor that makes growth a lot easier. And the other stuff that people like to talk about is marketing, advertising, and paying for ads is not it's gasoline on a fire, as opposed to we're going to put all of our eggs in this Google ads or Meta ads basket and hope for the best.
Right. Do you think that applies maybe differently for a company that is focused on, like, if they're a product-led business? So let's say if it's an actual product as opposed to a professional services business. So take consulting versus, somebody developing a phone or AirPods, right? How do you view potential differences?
Yeah, I think it's when you're a consultant, you're the product, right? You are selling yourself. And so at the end of the day, a product is a product. Either you have a great service offering that, in our case, for my business, it's every new client we've been able to connect with has been the result of word of mouth referral. Somebody I interacted with at some point in my career came along and said, I need your help, or this person I know needs your help. And so that referral flywheel I mentioned, that's been a huge driver of our business. And so I think, totally different between selling yourself as a consultant and selling a phone in terms of the end product, but the mechanics of how things grow and how people talk about great products, I think, are very similar. And I like to think, and I'm really proud of the fact I've never actually marketed myself as a consultant. All of it's been referral and word of mouth, which I think makes the process of closing a deal or selling a new client is a lot easier when it's a warm lead as opposed to kind of outbound and cold.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into that. I mean, today you have 4/maybe 5 kind of full-time people on the team. You also have a team of 40 or 50 potential 1099s or contractors that or freelancers that you work with. So I want to get into kind of how you have gone about doing that, and how you also think about when the consultant, meaning you, is the brand, is what people are coming for, how you think about scaling beyond just yourself. But before we get there, I'll hit the rewind button and take us back to your time as an executive. And I'm wondering what was going on. Why did you decide to leave working as an executive inside of these well-known growing companies to start your own consulting business and agency?
Yeah, I have had a really fortunate career that I'm super grateful for. And I like to think that maybe some amount of skill was involved, but it's certainly a lot of my moves throughout my career were happenstance and luck, right place, right time, knowing the right person. For me, there got to a point where I was doing a lot more teaching than learning. So, my most recent role, before I kind of went into advising and consulting with companies full time, I was an executive at a Fortune 200 healthcare company running kind of a startup business inside of that. And, it was really interesting problems we were solving in the healthcare space. but you know, I wasn't as challenged or as pushed to my limits and learning. And I think I get a little bored. And so for me, the trigger point was really knowing there was a bunch of pent up demand for the kinds of stuff that was rattling around in my head. And people were kind of coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, it would be great if you could help me with this problem or that. And knowing that I'd also built up this amazing network of people that I'd work with or worked for me, or I knew over the years that also were looking for those kinds of new challenges and opportunities. And I think it was, you know, perfect storm, like stuff kind of comes together. It was actually as I was leaving Headspace, and a friend of mine reminded me of this recently, that I turned to him and said, someday I'm going to start an agency that's not an agency. And I'm going to bring you and all these other great people we've worked with me, and we're going to work with companies doing really cool stuff and help them grow. And he, you know, I was on the phone with him maybe a few months ago. He said, you know, you did that. You actually have done that. And I was like, oh yeah, I did do that. And so it kind of just happened, right? And I wish I could give like, oh, well, there was this moment and I realized, but you know, kind of following your truth and the things that you're passionate about, but also good at. So like bringing those two things together, that's been what has worked well for me. And being an executive, while, you know, titles are cool and shiny and fun, you know, sometimes the most value, and for me in my career, like just getting my hands dirty, working on hard problems with really smart founders and in tech startups doing cool stuff, that's been the most rewarding, fulfilling time in my career.
So I mean, you talk about having this kind of vision of what you wanted to do, and then now you're looking back, it's like, well, okay, I've actually done this, or I'm in the process of doing this. You mentioned, you know, right time, kind of right place. There's maybe some luck involved, but I think if you kind of zoom out for a moment and look at what you feel played maybe the biggest role in ensuring that you didn't leave that path, but you actually kept going. Is there some mindset that you have, or some belief, or something that you feel is like really just integral to who you are, from the perspective of this is like what actually helps you to be successful and to not only identify a goal, but actually make sure that you achieve it? How do you think about that?
That's a really hard question. I think the mindset I have is rooted deeply in resilience, which is, you know, no matter how many times you fall down, fail, like, you know, you pointed to all these cool things I've done in my career. There are as many or more failures, like just massive. Yeah, can I swear?
Yeah, well, you can just let us know you're going to me. We're trying to make this
I won't
there we
say
go.
that. I was going to drop it, but there, you know, there's many times where I've messed up in my career, and learned a ton from that. And I think being resilient enough to say that mistake, that screw up doesn't define me, and allows me to see things more clearly and know what not to do next time. That's been kind of key to my success, because I think there's as many, if not more, failures than successes. And then following the people and working with the people that have been most formative for me has been huge. So, you know, there's folks that I now work with that consult on companies that I work with, that worked with me at the first startup I co-founded, and then came to the next startup, and then came to the next startup, and now consult with me. And surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than me, that are more talented, that are disciplined in interesting and complementary ways to myself, has allowed me to kind of just breathe a lot of life and variety into my own professional life in a way that, you know, is like gives a lot of energy as opposed to taking energy. And I'm sure people can relate to the idea of like working in a big corporate job, or in a large organization with hundreds of thousands of employees. Sometimes you feel like a number, and sometimes you don't feel as much meaning or connectedness to the work. And so whenever I can kind of ground myself in these like really awesome people, that always helps me kind of refresh and reset, and not feel like, oh, it's just another day at the doldrums or Dilbertville.
Has your relationship with the concept of failure changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like more theoretical when I was earlier in my career. Like I hadn't had that many failures, and like I think I still was pretty afraid of it. And you know, I worked at Google, and so it was fail fast and, you know, learn a lot, and it was a very safe place to fail. Once I kind of was in my first startup that I helped found and kind of get off the ground, is really like the first full-time employee, we were just messing up all the time. Like, you know, we launched our first, we were a healthcare, like Dr. House Call app. We launched our first market in Los Angeles, and that was going pretty well. But then we went and launched in San Francisco. It was a completely different market, totally different demographics and geography and all sorts of new challenges. And like, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like, you build it, they will come. That's not how it works. It didn't work that way. And we opened this new market, and like, I was sitting there waiting for the calls to come in and, you know, the people to use the service, and nobody was. And so we had to completely rewrite the playbook. And so I think it wasn't until I was working at startups, you know, I'd gotten out of the Google and Comedy Central world, that I actually experienced failure, and like the pain and the roller coaster of like startups, super high highs and then super low lows of like, oh, this is going to fail. We're going to run out of money tomorrow, and it's, you know, it's never going to work. And then the next day we just raised a huge round of fundraising. We closed this huge kind of enterprise deal, and now things are in a great place. And, you know, that it's not great on, you know, relationships and family and stuff, but it's very exciting and fun.
Yeah. I mean, I find like my relationship with this concept of failure, I don't even like to use the word failure. It's more like a learning experience, but I think early on, it's something that you really try and avoid. And then as you kind of develop and progress through years of experience and kind of the, you know, your career, at least in my observation and experience, it's like, you just kind of understand that it's there. It's not necessarily that you want to fail or, you know, to make mistakes, but you just know that you're going to. And the more that you kind of understand that, it becomes quite empowering, because you recognize that that's just going to be a learning experience. And if you learn from it, as long as you apply it, you're just going to get stronger and better. And then there's no real stopping you. So that's kind of when the game of entrepreneurship becomes fun, that if you have that mindset that is open and you just welcome it, it kind of just becomes, you know, a part of it, as opposed to trying to always avoid it. And I think when you operate from that mindset of avoidance, it's like the scarcity mindset, and then you end up not taking action, which just holds you back. So it sounds like that's kind of what you've experienced as well.
I totally agree. And yeah, I think failure used very loosely as a term.
Yeah. So let's talk about your business today, Winston Francois.
You got it.
All right. So first, like, we just have to address the name. What is the name, and what does this company do today?
Yeah, my wife and I have two French bulldogs named Winston and Frank, aka Francois.
Okay.
When I met her, she had Frank. He was a puppy, and she was calling him Francois or Frank or Francis. And then we got Winston a couple of years later. Their Frenchies are a lot. I don't know if you've ever got to hang out with one. They're totally nuts. They're crazy dogs. They're a lot of fun. So yeah, I named the company after the two dogs, and people are like, where does that name come from? Is this a law firm? Like, is this some kind of hoity-toity thing? It's a little weird, and it's got French in it. I don't know. But I like telling people where it's from, because then everybody kind of smiles like you just did and chuckles about it. And it's a little disarming. You know, there's lots of silly consulting firm and agency names out there, and I like ours. It's unique.
Yeah. So what do you guys do? What does Winston Francois do?
So at a high level, we are a boutique growth consulting firm that helps anyone grow. So you could be, you know, a first-time growth hacker, growth marketing manager working at a company, and you know, we're going to start releasing content that helps explain kind of growth basics and principles, to, you know, a founder, C-level executive at a, you know, Series B startup that's trying to kind of break through that next level of growth and figure out some things operationally, organizationally, put the right process, programs, and teams in place to succeed. We tend to come in and provide fractional support, both at the strategy level and the kind of head of VP C level, as well as actual hands-on keyboard executional kind of operators that can get things done across basically every discipline of growth and marketing. So think, you know, brand, product marketing, lifecycle marketing, content marketing, search and performance marketing, and you know, social media ads, PR and communications, even like growth design, engineering, building apps and websites and experiences. I've just accumulated this amazing group of people over the course of my career, and so we're able to plug those folks in to exciting, high growth companies and help them scale and solve problems. And then we're not like an agency in that we're not there to work with you for 5-10 years. We want to help you achieve some very discrete growth objectives in the short to medium term, and then move on and help the next company.
You talked about, one of the things that you're proud of is that you haven't, to this point anyways, had to do much marketing, if any at all, for the business.
Yeah,
so
this is my first podcast.
there we go. Right. So let's talk then about kind of the early days when you started this, because there's a lot of people who might be in a situation either where they're looking again to make the transition into consulting, or maybe they've even been consulting for, a decade, but most of their businesses has kind of come the same way as you, just from referrals and their network. So take us back to the day when you were getting started. What did you do to start bringing in those first few clients? Did you send a bunch of emails to people? Like, what did you do to get those first few ones in the door?
Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate that I didn't email anybody. I got emailed, right? I had a colleague that worked with me at Headspace. He referred me to a really cool founder that he was working with, and that was how I started working with the first company that we helped. And it was very organic. And then that guy introduced me to probably the next 5 or 10 companies that I worked with, and it had that kind of domino effect. And so for people that are kind of trying to figure out where to start, my recommendation would be start with your network. Once you are kind of made the decision that you're going to do this, or you're trying to kind of find those new growth channels for who you could work with, tell the people that you've either worked with in the past in other ways, and maybe not as a consultant, but in full-time opportunities, or the network of people you worked with at other companies, and let them know that you're doing this. And like you said, send an email. You could send an email. LinkedIn is super effective at just letting people know what's going on. And I think once you kind of hang up that shingle and say, hey, I'm doing this, and this is something I'm really proud of. I've built all these amazing things over the course of my career, and I want to bring that knowledge to other companies and help them. It just takes 1 or 2 people who believe in you and go, wow, yeah, you're great. I got to introduce you to this person, to kind of be the spark that sets off a series of amazing kind of connections to the next opportunity.
A lot of people, might be in a similar position where they've gotten some referrals, but your business is really solely based on referrals. And again, if you can zoom out and just look at, what you do, your typical engagement, what you focus on, I'm wondering what you've maybe already consciously identified, or if you haven't, just thinking about it now, what do you think makes the difference? And what I mean is to the point where you're just getting a lot of referrals, right? So a lot of people will deliver on a client engagement, they'll do good work, but they don't necessarily get the referrals, or they don't get enough referrals. In some cases, that's just because they don't ask for them. In other cases, maybe there's something missing in terms of their delivery or their focus or how they execute that project. What do you think is kind of that special sauce or the secret of what you're doing that allows you to generate so many referrals, where you don't actually even need to market?
Yeah. I think that there's no secret sauce or special formula. I think first and foremost is deliver and be good at what you do, and be an expert. And then, a lot of people in my career have helped me without expecting anything in return. And so what I try to do in all of my relationships, professionally and personally, is offer help, be that person to support, whether formally or informally. And that sometimes turns into the next opportunity as a consultant. So, what I've done with a lot of companies, and we met through this amazing, founder community called Hampton. Somebody has a founder that I know has a question or a problem, something they're trying to solve in growth and marketing. And I raise my hand and say, hey, yeah, I've encountered that before. And, just message me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And then, have a 30-minute conversation, tell them the things that I've faced before, how I address that problem. And, if they go, well, I need more help than this, do you know somebody who can do this or that? Like, then that kind of tees up the next conversation. And I think the other thing is you actually just said it, like, you should ask too. We're about to kind of launch a new website and start to really tell our story a little bit more broadly. So the timing of this conversation is great. And part of doing that is kind of promoting what we do, and asking the people who've worked with us and had a great experience to share it. And so setting up that kind of referral template and flywheel, if you will, and giving people like a series of questions. Hey, give me a quote about your experience working with us. You can put that on their website. Hey, can I use your logo to say that we worked together before? Put that on your website and in your marketing materials and in your pitch decks.
Mm-hmm.
And, asking them, can you tell other founders, other executives that about what we've done together? I'd really love it if you pass this along. Here's a blurb that you can use to forward to your network. And just teeing up all that stuff and making it really easy for the person who you're asking something of to do it. And hopefully you've already done a lot for them. And so they're like, no problem. This is no skin off my back.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, your mindset and approach to this is really about giving, before you think about taking or asking, and that has served you well. You mentioned your website, and as of today, it's maybe different when this goes live.
It's going to be good. It'll be different tomorrow, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, the website is almost like non-existent. It's there. There's a logo, but there's nothing there. How long has it been like that? Has that been since you launched the business?
Yeah. At first, we didn't even have a website.
Okay.
We added a website maybe last year or the year before, and it's what you see now, which is like nothing. And
it's a logo. Form. Yeah, it's right. So what I found so interesting about that I really wanted to bring it up, very often one of the things that holds consultants back, regardless of kind of what stage they're at, but from a marketing perspective, landing consulting clients is about conversations, right? The more conversations you have, right, the more business you'll typically generate. But a lot of people hold themselves back because they're trying to build a lot of stuff, like build their website, build all this, just building things, but they're not having conversations. And so the reason I want to highlight your kind of quote unquote lack of website right now, Jason, is because you've built your business, right? You have a team, you're growing, but yet you don't have a website. I mean, there's a website, but it's not like a real functioning kind of website, but you're still able to be successful. So anything that just stands out around that you would maybe tell somebody who's just trying to really they're thinking, oh, I have to make my website spectacular in order to create a successful business. How would you kind of counsel or advise, or just, share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think simple, keep it simple, stupid, keep it stupid, simple. I as a counter example, late last year, I was like, I'm going to start building out all this content and teach people to do what I know how to do, and use these amazing consultants that I work with to teach their craft. And so I'm going to build a studio in my office. So in the other room, I have, backdrops and lights and cameras and a teleprompter. And I invested a bunch of money in all this stuff. And I have released zero content. And so you can throw a bunch of money and people and resources at something. But to your point, if you don't take that, do the last mile, just have a lot of conversations, like write a lot of stuff, in my case, to start recording it and creating content. I think it's not about the kind of coat of paint and the shine and the veneer of the surface of what you're doing. It's the substance. And so one of the things, going back to the last question, that I think is really important that I should have mentioned, is under promise and over deliver. I think I often will tell a prospective client or client something that I know I can knock out of the park, that I can over deliver on that. And, if I say, hey, I'll get you a pitch deck next week, or I'll come back to you with that proposal, or we'll have that deliverable done in a week, and deliver it in 2 or 3 days, that just sets us up for better interactions, and, people feeling like, man, this is just a ton of value, and like somebody who is working very hard to support me. And so, don't worry about making the perfect website. And to your point, Michael, get on a bunch of calls and find out from real potential customers what they need, and then build that, and only that. And so, just to go back to the website point, like a simple lead form is probably all you need, set up on some sort of CRM so that you can send out a series of emails introducing yourself and what you sell and what you do, and can track the interactions you have. But you can have a CRM and a spreadsheet, and you can send emails from your one email account, and you can have a single page website like we do with a logo and a contact form on it, and you'll be okay. Yeah. When you start to grow, and as we are, we're about to launch a real website, because it's probably time. It's a little bit overdue, actually.
Does anyone actually fill in that form, since there's nothing on your website other than the logo? They do.
Some people do. Yeah.
What do they say? Like, I found you this, like, here, I heard about you guys, or like what? I'm just wondering, when someone comes to that website and it's just your logo right now in a form, like what are they actually saying?
They've come there because they found me on LinkedIn, or they know us. You know, if they haven't been able to get a warm introduction, then they fill out and say, hey, I'm looking for the help with this. But
Got it.
you know, 99% of everything we've done has come from people reaching out through connections that I have, as opposed to, you know, just a cold form on the website. And I think that's about to change. I'm about to kind of publicly promote the fact that we've built this kind of consulting business.
So one challenge that you know, typically earlier stage consultants will have is, and this is back to your earlier point, that the brand is you, right? It's your network, your connections. People are coming to you initially because it's the Jason show, right? But to scale that to you know, you can't be involved necessarily in every single project to the same degree that you were earlier on. What have you learned about that process, or kind of making that transition or shift so that there isn't as much reliance on just you, or just creating more, you know, more time and space for yourself to work in other areas of the business?
Yeah, it's not easy. And I'd say I haven't completely succeeded in that yet. I still represent 100% of all of our new client acquisition comes through me and my network and referrals to me. However, part of this kind of metamorphosis that we're in the process of right now is all about establishing Winston Francois as a brand, and me as an ingredient to that brand, but many other people that have similar or different complementary skills to me. I think a really good piece of advice I can give to consultants is start to groom and establish a really strong number two. I've been able to do that, and this woman on my team is basically able to do just about anything I can do. And so she's allowed me to scale. So if I'm working with one company and kind of managing a team that we've brought in with that company, she can go take another company. And maybe I was involved in selling in that engagement, but I'm actually not working on the engagement at all. We recently had a client actually where we kind of swapped. I was working on it, she was working on it, and we had a conversation. I talked to the founder and I was like, look, I think it'll be much more valuable for you to just have her leading this engagement. And he agreed, and that allowed me to step back and focus on other client projects. But I think having that strong number two is important. If you don't have that person today, I think, you know, seeking out somebody who has either a similar or complementary background to you that could be that person to support you is important, and to start building, you know, mini brands around the IP that you've built, as opposed to the individual people. Because then when you go and engage and sell a new client, it's less about oh, I have to have this person, I want this process you built. I think the best example of this is like EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system.
Right.
It's like franchise model now and is huge.
Sure.
I think even a small consultant and a one person shop that maybe is trying to grow can develop IP, and probably has IP that they can then scale and train and lead other teams to sell in and operationalize.
You talked about, I mean, I love this idea of kind of training, you know, molding, supporting a number two to the point, you know, and it might be multiple people over time. But can you add a little bit more detail to, like, what have you done? What does that training look like? How have you essentially got this number two person to get to up to speed into the level where, you know, to where you are, or close, or at least to the point where you feel comfortable and confident to hand over, you know, valuable kind of client engagements and work to them?
Yeah, for me, it's been my management style is very much hands off. So I allow people to shine and kind of do what they're great at. In her case, she really spiky and successful in performance marketing, growth marketing, kind of conversion rate optimization, and running kind of web teams and mobile app teams that can drive growth and kind of build a growth flywheel across channels. Where she didn't have as much experience was things that I've done in my career around brand marketing and kind of creative, and maybe a little bit less on like life cycle. And these are all kind of learnable, teachable disciplines. And so what I just did over the course of, you know, the couple of years now we've been working together is just keep giving her exposure when we're working with a client that we're doing something on that work, giving her exposure to those things, and then actually putting her in charge of them over time, and overseeing, you know, functional area operators and people who are experts in those disciplines, so she could manage their work, see their work, and ultimately take ownership and accountability for it. So the next client that comes along, you know, it's not, she's never done this before, she's done it, and she's also able to run this. And so it's just kind of playing to people's strengths and then coaching them up and giving them shots on goal opportunities to kind of embrace the areas that they maybe aren't as strong on, or could use to sharpen skills.
Is there anything inside of that in terms of how you kind of run meetings with this person or other people on your team? Like, is there a certain kind of frequency, cadence? Are there certain SOPs you bring into it? Is there, how do you kind of, just a little bit more granular, how do you kind of approach all that?
Yeah, so meetings are kryptonite for me personally. And when we're consultants and we're doing billable hours, we generally try to have a very tight schedule with clients. And then, we'll do weekly meeting with the client, and then we'll focus a lot of our time on delivery. And then, if there needs to be another touch point later in the week where it's a report out or a delivery meeting, but internally, she and I probably talk every day, multiple times a day, about everything that's going on. I've brought her in basically to every aspect of the business with full transparency, up including pricing and margins and how everything works. And I kind of coached and developed her on the business development process, so she can go do a pitch with a client without me now and sell in a team and go and resource and build that team. And the way I've made that work is just given her, economic and financial upside to doing that. So beyond just, if she puts herself on a deal and has her kind of retainer or hourly rate that she's also getting participation in the economics of the overall deal and the overall contract value. But the kind of frequency and intensity of engagement comes from my time working at startups, which is just, we just run at problems as fast as we can. We use whatever available communication channels make the most sense. We meet and talk through things if we need to, but otherwise we're on Slack 24/7. We're firing off emails. We're in Google Docs and slides and sheets, building out all the materials to support a client. And it's extremely fluid. Like, it's not, there's not like this regimented approach. I think as we scale, and as with any organization, as more process kind of comes in place because it's required, we'll probably have more of that. And I'm not a fan. I'm very allergic to meetings, but ultimately, like, they do serve a purpose. And so we'll use them sparingly and very intentionally.
Is there anything that you learned, maybe you tried, that just didn't quite, feel right, or didn't create the result that you wanted when it comes to kind of that incentive or bonuses or profit shares, or however you're kind of structuring that with this person or other team members, but anything that maybe you tried and didn't work that you could share and others can learn from?
Yeah, with some of the people I've had in the team, there was one other person that I gave this kind of access to and visibility into margins, and it didn't work because they weren't as senior as she was, and so they didn't handle the client conversations as well. They kind of made some bad calls about how to loop in additional resources and support, and to your point about meetings, didn't join important pitch meetings, and things kind of didn't land and didn't close. And as a result of not, the mistake is on me, right? I picked somebody who was a little bit more junior and a little bit more inexperienced, that wasn't ready for that responsibility and that level of accountability. And so, that person ultimately is not actively consulting anymore with me. And I don't blame them for it. I think I just was hoping that I could see them level up into yet another number 2 or number 3 position, and they weren't quite ready for it.
I love what you just said there in terms of, you're taking responsibility, even though many people in that same situation would put more of the onus or the blame, or say like, this person, like, they'd point out more of what was wrong with the other person. And what I really like that you just did that right now, and I'm something that I try and also kind of live by, is that at the end of the day, if you're the leader of your company, it doesn't matter, people make mistakes, it still comes back to you in one form or another, and you got to learn from that and take ownership for it. So I really like that you call that out. As you talk about bringing on kind of a senior person, one area that people struggle with at times or just aren't sure about is how to bring in talent. If you think about, let's say, a senior marketer, well, that person could potentially, go anywhere or get a job at a much larger firm that potentially could pay them a lot more. What have you learned, or how do you kind of think about attracting, great people that are more senior or just that are very good, when you potentially don't have the same kind of resources budget when it comes to salaries, potentially right away? How do you kind of think about that?
I think about it in terms of the people. So my greatest selling point, and everybody that works with us started out doing so kind of just as a side hustle, freelance contractors. The vast majority of the team, as I mentioned, are freelancers. And so it's complete control and flexibility, and it's a choice to kind of work with really, really smart people that are kind of hired guns that you can't really get access to and hire in your own company. So that's the sales pitch to a client. And I think it's also a sales pitch to potential new consultants, because the caliber of people they're going to be working with and the quality of thinking and the work, everybody just kind of does their stuff. And there's not, to my point about management style before, like nobody has to really be chased. We don't have to say, hey, you owe this client this deliverable. Like people just own it and they do their work. And so when we're, we don't really have to court anybody per se. Like we will go out to our network and say, is anybody interested in this? And we get a lot of inbound interest, especially post all the tech layoffs that have happened. Like a lot of people that are really talented that were otherwise very happily employed might not be in the same position anymore and are looking for opportunities like this. And then, to the point we were just talking about with profit sharing and kind of participation in the economics, the most talented folks kind of work their way into the best client opportunities and conversations and get access to more upside. I had a retreat with my team and basically explained to them, like, if you warm introduce us to a new client that we closed, there's a referral commission for that. If you help close that deal yourself, here's what the referral commission is for that. And then, billable hours, if you work this many billable hours, I'll fly you and your family out and you can stay in my house out in Palm Springs. Like there's some amount of like cool stuff you get to do and work with really great people.
Right.
And yeah, a big company might give you a bigger salary, more benefits, different stuff. And I think it's based on where people are at in their career and their own journey to say, I'd rather have that small team kind of intimate family kind of feel as opposed to big company where I'm just a number. And the last point I'll leave you with on that question is we have this intros channel in our Slack that I just started, inspired by another intros channel you and I are both a part of. And they're introducing themselves, and one of the team members goes, as a reason that they're here, Winston Francois cares about its people. And it was an interesting thing for me. I sent it to a couple of people. I was like, that really warms my heart, because I'm trying to be really intentional about the culture I build, and people that want to be there and feel seen and heard, that they're valued.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. And we've seen the same thing with a few of the people that have joined the team, in the more kind of recent years, saying that what attracted them to Consulting Success and want to be part of the team, and in many cases leaving, maybe bigger firms, was due to the values, due to the focus on that. And so it's nice as a leader to kind of to hear that, because back in the day, like, we didn't think as much about values, but as the focus has been more on growing the team and there's a lot more growth happening, the values and really identifying those and trying to make sure that everybody's living them or understanding them, it's so critical. I wanted to ask you a few more questions here before we wrap up. You talked about one thing that you're doing right now, or coming soon, is the website, right? In terms of kind of next stage or evolution of the business. As you think about growth right now and growing the business and kind of getting into that next level of success, whatever that looks like for you, what's, one or two things that you really have your sights set on that is a priority for you to kind of achieve that next level of growth?
Yeah, it's a couple things. So we want to teach people, live the mission, which is to help anyone grow. So building out a suite of content, and that includes me starting to actually use that studio in the other room and make educational, informative, kind of 101 level material to really teach anyone to the basics of growth marketing, and then get into deeper levels of sophistication with the experts on the team that know their stuff and can teach it. I think that's an amazing kind of growth angle for us, because it allows us to scale beyond the kinds of companies that can afford to work with us, and then into individual contributors and leaders and people who want to learn this stuff. And I think there's a space in the market for it today, because I don't feel like there's good content out there for people that are not already understanding some of the acronyms and the jargon and in this world. So being more approachable and accessible is a core part of that. Another piece that we're working on is building out basically a marketplace of these experts. So, if you're not ready to do like a whole engagement with us, being able to just book calls. There's a bunch of these kind of third-party knowledge networks that connect knowledgeable people. They may not even be a consultant with companies looking for that information, and they're like kind of a broker of that. I'd love to take the group that we have and basically expose them, for those that want to be able to be booked just on a one-on-one basis for support. And I think that's another great opportunity to capture additional growth and revenue. And then we're also looking at ways that we can help earlier stage companies through just basic connectivity into their Slack. So if you have just a simple question you want to ask the expert in this performance marketing topic or lifecycle marketing, connect to our Slack for a relatively nominal subscription fee, and there'll be a person that within one business day responds to you and gives you that answer. So these are all things we're kind of playing around with that we'd like to grow. And the big ambitious 5 to 10 year plan is growth as a service, and being able to package together these talented consultants and digital kind of products, SaaS, data layer, and technology to basically create the visualization, dashboards, reporting, and information that that companies need to understand how they're doing, and understanding the health of their business, and plugging in the experts to actually help them move those metrics and show them. So a little bit of a SaaS play there, but that's a longer term objective for sure.
You mentioned resilience as kind of being one of the keys to your success, or something that you feel contributes to it. Are there any other habits or kind of mindsets or beliefs that are front and center for you that you feel really help you to kind of perform the way that you do?
Yeah, I think it's all about the work. Like, get your stuff done, deliver, work hard, but smart. So, not only get back up when you fall down, be resilient, but also just, I think my whole career has been based on me working circles around other people and just being able to execute and chop a lot more wood. And I think there's an element of just having more grit and passion for what you're doing. And if you don't, it shows.
How do you do that though? I mean, and when you say just chop more wood, is like, do you feel that's because you work more hours? Do you think it's because you are more kind of efficient or effective, or you have better tools or automations, or like, what do you feel kind of contributes to you being able to actually chop more wood?
Big part of it is just like, I am hyper efficient and I can be hyper focused. And so I tend to lots of lists and knock out the highest priority stuff as quickly as possible, and blocking time. So I know that I'm better at like complex, high, brain power tasks earlier in the day, and by the afternoon I'm kind of shot. So I'm doing this in the afternoon when I would normally have meetings, because energy level wise I don't have as much to focus and deliver. So it's structuring my day, building my calendar around blocks of work time and meeting time, and really trying to cut out the noise. There's so much kind of stuff that gets in our head and tries to distract us from what matters. My Slack notifications are basically snoozed on my primary work computer here. And so I'll go and check Slack in chunks of time, but I'm otherwise in a window working on something, and ignorant to all the notifications that are blowing me up. The focus modes on iOS are great, like your work mode. And so only my wife can text me and everybody else can basically F off. And, and in different times of the day, things are blocked or allowed. And look, I really feel like, I live like an inbox zero life, where I try to just clear everything out by the end of the day before I sign off, if possible. It's really hard to do, but clear out all the notifications. When I see people's phones and they have, the red bubble with 10,000 unread emails, it stresses me out. Like, I have a panic attack for them. And some people that works, right? My wife is that way, but I can't do it. I have to clear everything out. And, it allows me to stay hyper-focused on where I think I'm going to drive the most impact.
Yeah. All right. So a couple final ones here.
Sure.
Over the last 6 months or so, what's one book that you have either read or listened to? Could be fiction or nonfiction, but just something that you've really enjoyed and that you would maybe suggest that others take a look at.
Last 6 months. I'm going to cheat and say something from a while ago, but just
That's
for
fine.
me and the conversation we just had, there's two. There's The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which is just an awesome book, and like really formative for people that are trying to do and solve hard technology problems and build teams around them. And the other one that's in the same kind of ballpark is Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. Those are both awesome books. Yeah.
We'll have those linked up in the show notes. Yeah, the first one has been mentioned a few times over the last, probably a year or two, but I don't know if Peter Thiel's book has been mentioned. It may have been once, but
that one's great. It's all
yeah.
about like building something that is an order of magnitude better than the prior thing.
Yeah, thinking bigger, and yeah, good suggestions there. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure, Jason, that everyone can, go someplace to learn more about you and your work. Send them to your website at this moment as we're recording. Probably is not going to be the best, but maybe it'll be by the time this goes live. So where should they go? What's kind of one place?
Yeah.
Is the website? Is it your LinkedIn profile? Is it something else? Where can they learn just more about you and your work?
What website's great? We'll have a new website up in a matter of hours. Hopefully, it was
There we go.
launching today. But the website is winstonfrancois.com, and if you're not sure how to spell Francois, there's a forwarding URL from wf.team, TEAM, wf.team.
All right, we'll have this linked up as well in the show notes, so you can head to consultingsuccess.com and see all this stuff and all the links and everything we've talked about. Jason, thanks so much for coming on.
Michael, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.